In the world of money and power, truth is the first casualty. Some companies rise on innovation, others on deception. Behind every record profit and glowing headline, there are shadows, hidden accounts, fake assets, and men who believed they were untouchable. From Europe's digital darling, to Wall Street's wildest empire, to the quiet patriarch who fooled the world. These are the biggest corporate frauds that fell apart in the chaos they left behind. Wirecard. Few names evoke such a rapid, embarrassing collapse. This German fintech company wasn't just a startup. It was a national champion, once valued at nearly $30 billion, destined to rival Silicon Valley's giants. Its CEO, Markus Braun, a physicist in his signature turtleneck, was hailed as a visionary genius. Investors adored him, and politicians cheered him on. But Wirecard's success was built on a foundation of fraud so vast that when the structure finally fell, it severely damaged the reputation of an entire nation's financial oversight. The question that defines this story is, how could a lie of this magnitude deceive a continent for over a decade? Wirecard's ambition was boundless, aiming to dominate global payment processing. Braun insisted technology was the key, but the true engine was opacity. To sustain the myth of relentless growth, Wirecard utilized a complex web of foreign subsidiaries and third-party partners, mainly across Asia in locations like Singapore and the Philippines. This financial labyrinth was designed for one single purpose: to hide the painful truth that real profits barely existed. The method was an audacious combination of accounting fraud and money laundering. Wirecard reported massive sums of money as revenue from high-risk transactions. In reality, these funds were non-existent, cyclically flowing or outright invented through third-party companies, some reportedly owned by company officers. Wirecard was able to manipulate profits effortlessly because its legal business had almost non-existent margins. Jan Marsalek, the COO, was the shady mastermind managing the convoluted Asian network, moving cash strategically across various jurisdictions. The facade of success was so convincing that red flags, though raised as early as 2008, were dismissed. German regulators even investigated and charged critics, often short sellers and journalists like the Financial Times' Dan McCrum, with market manipulation, effectively punishing those who spoke the truth. Wirecard's arrogance was total. They believed they were untouchable, resorting to hiring private detectives to intimidate the press. The pressure for scrutiny grew overwhelming, making an external audit by KPMG unavoidable. This is where arrogance turned into desperation. Wirecard executives actively obstructed the investigation, refusing to hand over critical documents. They moved funds to confuse the paper trail as the fraud was too big to contain. In a last-ditch effort, Marsalek and Braun claimed that 2 banks in the Philippines held proof. They said 2.1 billion euros in cash were in escrow accounts with external partners. This became the infamous phantom money, the single cornerstone of investor faith. The climax arrived in June 2020 when EY refused to sign the annual accounts. The reason was catastrophic. The 2.1 billion euros were missing. Filipino banks denied any relationship with Wirecard for custody of that money. Panic was total and immediate. Within 72 hours, the truth was out. The company lost 99% of its value, and Germany's tech dream disintegrated into fraud. The collapse was swift and absolute. Wirecard filed for insolvency. Markus Braun was arrested for inflating sales and market manipulation. Marsalek, the architect of the scheme, vanished and remains a fugitive. He reportedly fled to Russia, adding layers of international intrigue to the scandal. The Wirecard case cost investors billions and exposed failures in German financial oversight. It proved that when a company shows exceptional growth in a booming sector, suspicion is vital. Combining banking and non-banking operations, Wirecard managed to cloud its true accounts. No other major scandal combined accounting fraud with massive money laundering. Wirecard is a reminder that corporate truth always expires despite pride in technology. For a generation of traders, Stratton Oakmont defined 1990s excess. The firm, founded by Jordan Belfort, the self-proclaimed Wolf of Wall Street, was not just a brokerage. It was a cult of unbridled greed and hedonism. Belfort's operation was not secretive. It was loud, obnoxious, and utterly arrogant. From its Long Island headquarters, Belfort and his horde of young brokers ran rampant. They executed the most brazen stock fraud scheme of the decade, preying on over 1,500 investors. Their ambition was not just wealth, but obscene, boundaryless opulence. It was the sheer spectacle of their excess that led to their downfall. Stratton Oakmont's central strategy was the time-tested pump-and-dump securities fraud, perfected industrially. Their targets were penny stocks, cheap, non-exchange listed shares of worthless companies. First, the pump. Belfort and his inner circle secretly acquired vast amounts of penny stocks. Then, their young, commission-hungry brokers hit the phones with relentless aggression. Operating under the motto, "Don't hang up until the client buys or dies," they pushed hard. Using false and misleading positive statements, they lured inexperienced middle-class investors into the trap. The office was a drug-fueled frenzy designed to push brokers to manipulative extremes. As clients bought in, the stock price would artificially skyrocket. Then came the dump. Once prices peaked, Belfort and associates sold everything instantly for profit. The stocks collapsed immediately, leaving clients with worthless paper and total losses. Sources confirm the firm bilked investors out of approximately $200 million. The profits financed a lifestyle that was a cartoon of debauchery and greed. Epic office parties, drugs, prostitution, and insane spending became legendary inside Stratton Oakmont. Belfort amassed mansions, luxury cars, and a massive yacht that famously sank. This excess served a purpose. It created a dangerous illusion of invincibility. The brokers believed they were an elite club operating above the law entirely. Belfort openly mocked regulators like the SEC, convinced of his untouchable status. His arrogance was clear. He believed his speed and wealth gave him immunity. But their downfall began with an error of ambition and overconfidence. Not content with U.S. fraud, Belfort tried to internationalize the crime. He laundered profits through secret Swiss accounts using associates to smuggle cash strapped to bodies. This reckless expansion drew the attention of the FBI and IRS. Federal agents began investigating Stratton Oakmont for massive money laundering. The party couldn't last forever. Facing scrutiny and federal charges for fraud and laundering, the facade shattered. Jordan Belfort, who preached absolute loyalty, chose self-preservation over friendship. He struck a deal with the government, agreeing to become an informant. Belfort secretly wore a wire to collect evidence against his own empire. To reduce his sentence, the wolf betrayed friends, partners, and subordinates alike. Stratton Oakmont was officially expelled from the securities industry in 1996. Belfort and Danny Porish pleaded guilty to manipulating at least 34 company stocks. Belfort served only 22 months in prison in exchange for cooperation. Stratton Oakmont's story remains a brutal testament to greed destroying its own creation. In financial crime, some fraudsters are loud, others are whispers in silence. Bernie Madoff was the latter, an American financier and former NASDAQ chairman. He was viewed as a trustworthy patriarch, a philanthropist, and a financial genius. Investing with Madoff was not business. It was a privilege, a mark of prestige. His reputation became his greatest weapon, the pillar of the largest Ponzi scheme ever. The fraud reached $64.8 billion in fake value and $18 billion in losses. Madoff sought to be an untouchable deity of finance, commanding absolute confidence. His downfall became a brutal lesson on how trust hides the deepest betrayal. Madoff ran a legitimate market-making firm on the 19th floor of the Lipstick Building. The real fraud occurred in a locked, restricted office separate from the main business. He promised high, steady, and consistent returns, even when markets were falling. His supposed secret was a split-strike conversion strategy complex jargon to repel scrutiny. In truth, it was a pure Ponzi scheme with zero real investments. New investor money went into one Chase Manhattan account instead of the stock market. Withdrawals and profits were paid using new deposits, not legitimate earnings. Madoff thrived on exclusivity, recruiting clients only through word-of-mouth referrals. He targeted wealthy Jewish communities and elite social circles seeking safety and prestige. Entry required at least $1 million, reinforcing privilege and secrecy. The victim list grew to include charities, universities, celebrities, and global feeder funds. Madoff's world appeared calm, elegant, and orderly wealth without vulgarity. He owned luxury apartments, estates in Palm Beach in France, and private yachts. His fraud relied on invisibility, protected by his stellar reputation and social standing. The SEC investigated him several times after warnings from analyst Harry Markopolos. Madoff always produced flawless documents and fabricated statements that fooled regulators easily. His firm was a top trader in U.S. securities, granting him influence and credibility. His auditor was a tiny, obscure company, an ignored red flag of epic proportion. The financial world trusted Madoff's image rather than verifying his numbers. His arrogance came from believing endless trust, and new money would sustain the illusion forever. He was convinced his reputation alone made him immune to exposure and collapse. The Ponzi scheme was doomed from the start, a ticking financial time bomb. The 2008 global crisis triggered its implosion as markets crashed worldwide. Panicked clients demanded withdrawals worth billions of dollars all at once. New investor funds disappeared and Madoff could not meet his obligations. On December 10, 2008, he confessed to his sons, "It's all a lie." He admitted running a massive Ponzi scheme that had deceived everyone for decades. His sons immediately alerted federal authorities, leading to his arrest the next day. The fallout was devastating. Thousands lost savings and many charities closed forever. Madoff pled guilty to 11 federal crimes and received 150 years in prison. He died behind bars, leaving a legacy of ruin and disillusion. The Madoff case proves the greatest theft is not money, but faith itself. Empires built on lies always share the same fate: arrogance, illusion, collapse. Because in the end, no matter how powerful the fraud, the truth always collects its debt.